Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining. Greetings here from Lausanne, Switzerland. We're calling in from our global HQ, which is based at the EPFL University, and this is where the Timeline company was born over 15 years ago, and where we continue to be based today. So thank you so much for joining our second AMA. So we've brought this back on following popular demand. We had a great first one about a week ago, and this is the second one. So I'm joined here today by Dr. Anurag Singh, and I'll introduce him in just a sec. I'm Federico Luna. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Timeline, and delighted to have you. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Singh with us today. Dr. Singh is one of the leading doctors in this longevity space. He's not only a medical doctor, but also a Ph.D. So Anurag has been in the space for over a decade, with Timeline for over a decade as the Chief Medical Officer. Mm-hmm. Helped us pioneer the whole clinical program, took this remarkable molecule to the clinic and studied it in humans for the first time after many, many years of preclinical research. And so welcome, Anurag.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thank you to all the listeners. I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay, well, let's jump in. A quick disclaimer before we get to your questions. So while Dr. Singh is a phenomenal doctor, I wish he was my doctor, but he's not, and he's not your doctor either, unfortunately. So please do make sure that you consult with your doctor, your healthcare practitioner, on any medical advice. So this is not intended to be medical advice. We're simply here to share more about the research that both we have done, but also other amazing researchers around the world are increasingly doing on this blockbuster molecule that is called Urolithin A. So let's get to it. We have hundreds of questions to get through. Please do ask questions on the chat as well. So you've got a chat here on the YouTube channel and also on the Instagram, on the Amazon channel. So before I get into these questions, a couple of questions for you personally, Anurag.
Yeah.
So the first one is, as you look back at 2024, what are some of the biggest scientific discoveries you think either we or other scientists in the space have made in the longevity space? You think about, some research out of Stanford, for example.
Yeah. So I think the year 24 was really the year of longevity research, and there were some remarkable breakthroughs in the field. The number one, as Federico started mentioning, was really a study that came out of Stanford University, where they profiled a cohort of individuals across sort of 20-year spectrum. And what they found in this study was that there are really two peaks of aging. One that happens in the early 40s. So there's they relied on taking blood draws and really looking at thousands and thousands of biomarkers in the blood. And what they found was the first peak happens early in the 40s, and then the second peak happens really towards the 60 sort of age spectrum. And this appends how you think about longevity, because to somebody who trained in medicine 20 plus years back, the idea was you treat the symptom and you address when people are sick, in their 60s, 70s, you address sort of the condition. But now most of these changes are happening really at an early stage in the 40s. And so there is really hope that you can start early and really improve the health span.
Super. Other research that you think is?
Yeah, so the number two probably would be really sort of the deep, before there was actually a very seminal paper that said many years back, almost 10 plus years back, that defined what we call the biological hallmarks of aging, and there were 9 of them. And these linked to poor mitochondrial health, how the cellular organelles are talking to each other. But then these were revised and 3 more were added to the hallmarks. And these include really something that we call inflammaging. So, as we age, your body is really getting more and more inflamed, and that is turning out to be sort of the main hallmark, along with mitochondrial dysfunction. And there were other things like, gut microbiome dysbiosis, etc. So I think these 2 publications, and third, I'm a bit biased there, but I think there were about 100 plus papers, publications from really top universities around this postbiotic molecule, not coming from us, but really top leaders in the longevity field. And there were probably 3 groups that independently started talking about the potential of this molecule for cognitive health and brain aging. And I think that's the area where we are most excited to get into.
So that's a good segue. I mean, as you think about these hallmarks, after being in the space for over a decade, I mean, which do you think are the most realistic and most targetable hallmarks or pathways today from an aging perspective?
Yeah, I get this asked a lot because, there are obviously different hallmarks of aging, and people say, oh, should I think about my epigenetics or how my environment affects my genes, or is it all laid down in genetics? Is it all laid in my diet? These are not isolated pathways. They all cross-link and they are very intricately linked with each other. But I think all roads lead to two key ones, in my opinion, today. One is this chronic inflammation pathway, which is what we are calling inflammaging. And the second is this really the poor declining mitochondrial health. And together, these are very amenable also to intervention strategies, whether it's exercise, fasting, or nutritional supplementation with molecules such as Urolithin A. And I think that's where we are headed, really, is how can we design a whole longevity strategy around some of these key hallmarks and impact majority of them.
So, I mean, we've all, let's maybe start with mitochondria. I mean, we've all heard the powerhouse of the cell, but maybe break it down more specifically for us. I mean, where are the mitochondria? Are they important? Obviously we started some of our early research in muscle, and to this day, muscle continues to be a core pillar.
Yeah.
What do you see as the core pillars of aging, and then which are mitochondria linked to?
Yeah.
And what does now, the segue also to Urolithin A as a molecule, what pathway is it activating?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so mitochondria are in practically every cell type other than in red blood cells. So they are really key at whenever we are eating. So mitochondria are ancient bacteria that sort of integrated with our cellular machinery, and there exists a symbiotic relationship, which means that as hosts, we are eating the foods, the nutrients are coming, and these are really power plants. These are factories of energies that are then harnessing these nutrients and releasing energy as a source that allows us as hosts to get up from a chair, move around, think clearly. And with aging, what is really becoming clear is the more metabolic an organ, the more it relies on these mitochondria. So organs or cell types like skeletal muscle, neurons, the brain cells, cardiac cells, wherever there's a big input of energy and oxygen demand, that's where these are the organs that get impacted a lot. And so that's what you see when you get 60s and 70s. You see a lot of 60 plus population with heart ailments. You see a lot of neurodegenerative diseases coming up, and you see poor muscles, and that leads to things what we call frailty and sarcopenia. Just to give you an idea, I don't know if people will be able to see it, but I brought along today how a mitochondria looks like. So in the top corner, I think if you can see it, these arrows right there are showing these round structures you're seeing is how a healthy mitochondria looks in a young these are from an experimental model. Now in the middle is something what we call during the aging that you see the round organelles are really crumbling. The inside of them is like an electrical wiring, and that collapses, and that leads to really poor energy. And so we've been studying how things like nutritional interventions, and on the extreme right, what I'm showing you is how we discovered Urolithin A. Basically, what we saw was Urolithin A in older sort of mitochondria, zombie-like mitochondria. What you see compared to the middle, if you compare the rightmost picture, is that Urolithin A was reviving these mitochondria back from their fatigue zombie-like status to more healthier new mitochondria. And so this tells me that this is a very viable strategy to impact human health span and mitochondrial health.
So people may have heard the term zombie cells.
Yeah.
You're now mentioning zombie mitochondria. So what does that mean? And I believe there's a recent paper that may have come out on senescence specifically.
Yeah, so zombie cells or zombie mitochondria are essentially damaged mitochondria that are stressed. They are taking all the nutrients, but the input is coming, but the output, which is energy production, is not really there. And so these are what as scientists or physician scientists we call also as senescent cells or zombie cells, meaning they are just taking a lot of real estate. They are taking all the nutrients, but they're not really healthy enough to provide the output, which is cellular energy or the energy we need to move around. And so in the longevity field today, there is this idea that if you can clean out not just damaged mitochondria, but damaged cells, you can clear the real estate out and have better, newer, healthy mitochondria or newer cells. And so this is a process which, if it happens at a cellular level, we call autophagy. And if it happens at sort of this cleaning out process, and if it happens at the mitochondrial level, we call it mitophagy.
So it's almost like a mitochondrial Pac-Man.
It is actually a mitochondrial Pac-Man. The other definition, when I explain it to my 11-year-old is who's learning biology, is that think of it as the sort of the garbage disposal machinery system that is set up in place in your town. If the truck doesn't show up to pick your garbage, you'll not have a very nice smelling town, for example. And that's exactly what happens in our bodies.
Okay. Well, let's now take a few questions from the audience. So we've got, as I mentioned, hundreds of pre-submitted questions, also questions on the live. We're going to try to get through everything. The first question is, how come I feel so great?
Well, first, very happy to hear that you feel very great. I'm not sure if you generally feel very great or if you're actually commenting on the fact that you're feeling great on Mitopure. Nevertheless, if you feel great, it's a mix of, as I was saying, many things: your genetics, your lifestyle habits, the fact that probably you sleep well, but most importantly, I hope that it's due to your regular intake of Mitopure and other mitochondrial interventions that you're practicing. So mitochondria, back to just again circling back, I think if your mitochondria are happy, your organs are happy, and your body is happy, and at a whole body level, you just have a little bit more fuel in the tank at the end of a busy workday,
So the next question related to this one is, what are the benefits of taking Mitopure? What have we shown preclinically? What have we shown clinically in humans?
Yeah. So this has been, this has been many years, 15 years, as you said. And
how many clinical studies?
So as of today, we would have launched our 16th randomized clinical trial, and this is about 1,200 plus participants in these randomized clinical trials, all age groups starting from 20. And I will, of course, never forget this 89-year-old lady who kept telling me in one of the trials that she felt, she was more active. So, in general, mitochondria, as I explained, is equal to energy production, and with aging that energy production declines, and so people feel fatigue. You just feel that you recover it takes longer to recover. Your body is stressed, your body is inflamed. We see that in all the trials we run. Let's say the number one effect we see of regular intake of Mitopure at a cellular level, and it's not a magic pill. It doesn't happen, with 1 or 2 days or a week. It happens after a month of intake. When we look at the blood profile, when we look at, just as a picture I showed you, when we drill deep down into the sort of do things like biopsies and look at these cells and the mitochondria are just looking like what regular exercise kind of imparts benefits on mitochondria. So the mitochondria start, what I call the bad mitochondria get shuttled out, the newer healthy mitochondria are coming out. That takes about a month. That's what we see on almost every randomized clinical trial we run. 2 months in, we start seeing impacts on physiology, sort of what I call human physiology. So people, if you put them on a exercise testing, they go longer, they have a better endurance or sort of aerobic endurance capacity, which, for those of you who are into variables and stuff, you track your peak VO2 and things like this. That's the thing that gets most improved. And 4 months plus in, what we see is really the impact on improving muscle strength and lowering inflammation. And so that's sort of the crux of the data we have seen with the oral intake. We also have done many studies applying Mitopure in topical products. And there we also start seeing effects around 2 to 4 weeks. And then the best effects are seen around 2 months on things like delayed skin aging phenotype, which is really wrinkle formation, the hydration of skin, etc.
And so I guess 2 follow-up questions on that. I mean, one is we hear a lot about this concept of immune aging, also this concept of immune fitness.
Yeah.
And then also brain and even heart. Where does the research on Urolithin A specifically and Mitopure stand on these sort of new frontiers?
Well, this is where the entire longevity field is actually coalescing around that. Aging is not one organ aging, right? So obviously, muscle aging, muscle is a key longevity organ, and it's easy to study it in clinical studies, and people go after muscle. Now, these are all linked. The people who are frail in the clinic and the frail people I've seen in clinic, they are the fastest to have cognitive decline. So what we do see is a very close connection between muscle health and brain health and immune health. I believe is the foundation of all these declines that we are seeing with the different organs. And so in all the randomized trials we've run in the past, whether it's middle-aged adults or older adults, or even elite athletes who, believe it or not, are inflamed, we see, in addition to improvement in mitochondrial health, we see a decline in inflammation at a whole body level. And so we've even just run a clinical study, actually, a randomized trial that hopefully we can share with the audience in the next couple of months, that is in a top peer review journal right now under review, where we show that a month of intake in healthy adults can really have an impact on boosting this immune fitness that you were talking about. And by that, I mean, taking the senescent immune cells out. These are more fitter immune cells that will now survey, be their immune cells are really policemen and elite forces that guard you against cancer or things like infections and viruses. And so I believe improving mitochondrial health is very key to improving immune health and, as you mentioned, cognitive health as well.
And so there's a question here. We're going to move to live questions, folks. Thank you for your patience. Can we take a nootropic at the same time as Mitopure? And maybe just worth saying a couple of words about what a nootropic is and touching on the brain health aspect.
Yeah, a nootropic is something that improves sort of the neurotransmission between two brain cells, the neurons, right? So with aging, or in general, even with at the end of the day, your attention and your concentration ability declines, and that is very closely linked, as we talked, to mitochondrial health. And so basically a nootropic is basically any intervention that gives you sort of this additional feeling of alertness and more focus, more concentration. And how is it so the question, if I understood well, can I take a nootropic with mitochondria? I would even argue that to make a good nootropic product, you probably need to attack mitochondria as a core. And so we haven't done those studies. We have not done the trials. We have certain ideas that we are developing further. But I do believe combining Mitopure with a nootropic kind of combination will be a very good idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question from the audience here, just around dosing. So research shows 4 capsules. So that would be for the audience, that's 1,000 milligrams a day.
Correct.
Right. So we have 250 milligrams per capsule. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about dosing and the different benefits of different doses in different time periods.
Yeah. So we studied a number of doses. The first time we started in the first trials we did back almost 10 years back, we started studying doses almost as low as 250 milligram all the way up till 2 gram. And the 2 doses that really had a very significant effect on mitochondrial health and longer term on muscle strength improvements were the 500 milligram and 1 gram. Now, where we see 1 gram doing better in terms of functionality is on some of the chronic inflammation aspects that I was telling you about. That's where we see. So I think if you're a healthy person, if you're doing everything right, if you're exercising, eating right, I think 500 milligram is that foundational dose that keeps your mitochondria in a very good health status. And that's what I would stick to. And that's what we recommend. Now, there may be, if again, back to me, if I had somebody as a clinician seeing somebody who's extremely fatigued or whose body is inflamed, I would start out with 1 gram dose, because I know that could be an argument for a ramp up protocol with a higher dose. And then once I see the labs get better, I could switch them out to 500 milligram.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any any recommendations of any supplements to not take at the same time? And is there a best time of day to take Mitopure? Maybe starting with the second question, is there a best time of day, and can people take the powders and the capsules, or are these formats bioequivalent?
Yeah, so we have tested all the products, and we have tested what we call in sort of nerd language bioavailability, which just means when you swallow the pill or the powder, you take it in a yogurt or a smoothie, what is the level of exposure that you're getting to urolithin A? And when Federico says are they bioequivalent, yes, they are, meaning that both the powder and the soft gel are giving the same equal amount of exposure to urolithin A. So what is the best time? I think the best time, at least in the clinical studies, just to sort of harmonize every clinical trial participant, we do it first thing in the morning, and that's where we have seen.
Can I do it in a fasted state?
Yes. So in all our clinical trials, all the participants are in a fasted state. And there's this thought that, well, fasting is already getting the sort of the autophagy kicking in, and so you will kind of have a additive effect. Now we have tested it with a meal. So I've done randomized studies where I've looked at in a fasted state, and I've given volunteers a heavy meal and seen if there is any impact on the absorption of Mitopure, and there is no. So it's a very robust molecule, and it really boils down to how it fits with your lifestyle intake. It's not one of those let's say nutritional interventions or supplements that you need to think, oh, I need to take it in the morning or evening. I think it really, whatever fits with your schedule, take it. And we know it works, and with or without fasting.
And a lot of questions here around the topical versus the oral applications. Do I need to take both? If I take the supplement, will that help with my skin? We have Jay commenting here on the live that he's seen benefits for nails.
Wow.
So how do you think about oral versus topical?
Yeah, well, first, thank you. It's from really, feedback, when you're actually seeding ideas. When you say nails, so that tells me, oh, we need to think about studying how this works on nails in the future. But back to how is the oral different from the topical? Well, when you take something orally, it goes to all your cell types, it goes to all your organs. So there may be benefits when you take oral Mitopure on skin health. But when we started, if I remember correctly, about 5 years back, the first consumers actually started telling us about the skin improvements with the oral. And we said, let's make a topical product, because with the topical approach, you're making sure you're hitting the target organ, which is the skin, with a direct calibrated dose. And so we ran those trials. And so today, should I take oral or topical? Well, I think you should take both. If you have problems with skin, and if you consider skin aging as a big concern, topical is the way to go. But at a whole body level, I think as a foundational, the oral supplementation is keeping mitochondria at a whole body level happy.
I mean, we hear a lot these days about inside out, beauty from the inside out.
Yep.
And it sounds like this truly is from the inside out. It's
certainly a viable strategy. So that's, as we speak, that's the trial we have designed. The randomized clinical trial is to test the combination of the synergy of the oral and topical intake of Mitopure. We'll have to do one of these down the end of the year or next year, and I'll have data to share with the audience.
Okay, super. Other questions from the research. Can you share timelines for any ongoing research, or as you think about some of the most exciting research that you think is coming up?
Yeah, so brain health is for me the most exciting. That's the one I'm most excited about. We are running a trial in Norway today, where it just got IRB approval, and we are starting the recruitment pretty soon. The idea is to improve brain energy metabolism. So with aging, a lot of people have sleep problems. A lot of people have, as I mentioned, these early signs of cognitive decline. And the goal is not to wait till the 60s and 70s and go after sort of the mild dementia or mild cognitive impairment population, but really in the 40s and 50s, when the decline starts, that's to hit it, to improve brain energy metabolism then. And so this is a trial we are doing. Our collaborators actually one of them actually wrote to me that they have won a grant today to research Mitopure for cognitive neurodegeneration condition. And so I think together we'll see a lot of research coming on Mitopure and brain aging. But the one that we have that I think is the most exciting one today, or two of them, one is a study, an independent study being led by the National Institute of Aging. This is on metabolic health. This is in overweight individuals who are insulin resistant and their body doesn't make GLP-1 or these kind of endocrinal hormones to regulate metabolic health. And so this is a very exciting area. And the second one is cancer. I think whether it's post-cancer or even just a trial that we are finalizing today is really how in certain cancer populations can this become sort of the nutritional intervention strategy added on to whatever oncologists are proposing as the mainstream line of immunotherapy. I think that's really the two areas which excite me the most.
I mean, we do have to put in the caveat, folks. This is a supplement, right? So it's not intended to treat certainly anything like cancer.
Absolutely.
I mean, we are focused on a healthy population, but there is a lot of excitement in that oncology community. I think there's even grants from the National Cancer Institute.
Absolutely. So they are running the National Cancer Institute is leading a multicentric 6-center trial in the U.S. Focused on sort of the oxidative stress, the cellular stress that happens while you have, and this is in a cohort of prostate cancer patients.
Super. Okay, so there's a question here from Kelly. Is there a way to participate in our clinical trials? We hear this a lot.
Absolutely. We do trials around the world. Believe it or not, we've done them in Europe. We've done them in the US. We've done them in Australia with Olympians. And a lot of our collaborators, as a small research team here in a small company, we can do everything. And so a lot of top experts and professors in the longevity field are now coming to us to collaborate. And you can go look up in a website called clinicaltrials.gov. If you just type Mitopure, you'll find all the trials that are ongoing and recruiting today.
What are your thoughts on, we've got a couple of specific questions. So, muscle dystrophies, muscular dystrophies, I know we don't have any clinical studies.
Yeah. So again, this gets into sort of the cure and treating a disease aspect. And so if you're a supplement in a clinical trial setting from a regulatory perspective, you can't really run a clinical trial as a supplement. Then it has to be run by an investigator as a sort of as a new drug intervention. Now, there is a lot of research coming on muscle dystrophy. In fact, Professor Johan Ovrix was one of the most leading mitochondrial experts in the world today, has researched the benefits of Urolithin A in experimental models of muscle dystrophy. And he's shown, and this is a big science translational medicine publication. We can put it in the chat, in the show notes after the Q&A. But the research shows that there is a potential that this molecule can have an impact. And similarly, there have been studies done in sort of COPD. COPD is a condition of where that happens with aging and the lung gets damaged and people don't get enough oxygen consumption, and so that leads to muscle wasting. So there's a lot of cool research coming in different areas of our conditions.
And long COVID and CFS.
This is another, if I look at the literature, obviously, again, disclaimer, we haven't really done a randomized clinical trial in this population. But as I see, and I review a lot of these publications and grants coming in, there's such a massive buildup of evidence that mitochondria are really the most compromised in folks who have either long COVID or ME/CFS. And I think going forward, mitochondrial intervention strategies will be investigated a lot in these particular conditions.
And we have a comment here from Mary. Thank you for the comment, Mary. But also a lot of questions that were pre-submitted around, there are other urolithin A's out there. I mean, just go on Amazon and see how many options come up, and most of them are cheaper than Mitopure. What is special about Mitopure, and why should people make the additional investment for Mitopure versus these other urolithin A's?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question, and I think the two things that really set us apart. One is really the evidence-based approach, right? 15 years, as we were chatting, 10, 15 randomized clinical trials. We know the GMP production of the Urolithin A or Mitopure we make, that's the one that goes into clinical testing. It's safe. It works. Clinically, we have shown it.
It has the right dose.
It has the right doses. And we have done that. We have given, actually, as I was mentioning to you, we have gone up till 2 grams. After a gram, you kind of saturate the exposure and the bioavailability. And so we are seeing this flux of copycat products. I think there's a lot of them. In fact, most of them, I believe, we have looked at it. These are not GMP certified. These are not quality tested. Some are, in fact, most of them don't even have the right doses of Urolithin A. And I think I would just from as a clinician, I would just say, safety first. And that's where I draw the line, that a lot of them are not tested by third parties. We are tested by NSF. We are tested, we work with the world's best GMP manufacturers. And so that's what stands us apart, is really the quality and the research we have put behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Back to the live real quick. There's a question from Judy here. So it sounds like she's using or familiar with OneSkin that boasts removing zombie cells. Are you familiar? And how can you compare products?
Yes, I'm familiar with the OneSkin work. I do remember reading a publication where they have a certain peptide that they have found that enables, although I believe I haven't really seen a proper randomized clinical trial there, there's a lot of cell-based work and work on human cells and human skin cells, but there is evidence that it works by removing the sort of senescent cells that we were talking about. How does it compare? Well, back to what I was saying, Mitopure really hits on these zombie mitochondria, that have put this stress signal of eat me, and recycle me, and it has a very targeted effect on renewal of mitochondria. And I don't think there is any nutrient out there today with so much clinical science and safety with such a clean, clear, targeted approach in mitophagy, which is really the renewal of mitochondria.
Yeah. Changing gears a little bit, but does body mass or weight matter? Does it have an impact? And maybe if I just broaden the question a little bit, can you speak a little bit to the different populations that you've studied in the clinical setting?
Yeah, so many of them, many healthy adult populations. So we just have completed a number of trials.
Is it more men, more women? Is it older? Is it younger?
So all the trials we ran until the last one had a representation of 2:1. So 2 times more women than men. So we would have about 65% women in our trials. And this is traditionally a very underrepresented area in clinical research for many years. And so we made that effort to have different ethnicities, of course, having equal balance between the groups that we have. Even so, if you have a placebo versus a 500 milligram or a gram of Mitopure, we will make sure we have equal number of women and men in each arm. So in terms of the age groups, well, the youngest is a 20-year-old elite Olympian versus, as I mentioned, an 89-year-old very focused lady who didn't know what she was on, but was sure she was taking the active product and telling me that she was gardening more and moving more. So yeah, it's...
But just on that, I mean, it's, sometimes it can be perhaps misperceived as this miracle, right? I mean, how does it work for a 20-year-old Olympian and at the same time work for an 89-year-old gardener? I mean,
so it's very clear for the aging population, which has really, as I mentioned, their real estate inside a cell is filled with damaged mitochondria. The way Mitopure works there is cleans the waste out, and now you have room for healthier new mitochondria to go, and there's more energy, and people move more. They feel they have better endurance and strength. That's how it works for, let's say, the aging spectrum of things. For the elite athletes, obviously, who is at the peak of human performance and probably peak of mitochondrial performance, what happens in these elite athletes is overtraining. So if you just look at the mitochondrial health of an athlete at the start of the season and the end of the season, it's quite drastic. And the reason is chronic inflammation. Again, back to this connection between inflammation and mitochondrial health that I was talking to you about. So overtraining, sort of repetitive games, there's a lot of the, if you look at the NBA athletes, they're playing 4 to 5 games a week. It's really, and so where Mitopure works better there is really on the recovery. So kind of helping and toning down the inflammation and allowing a younger person to recover better.
Mm-hmm. And question from Anthony here: are your studies double-blind and placebo-controlled?
Absolutely. As somebody who's a physician scientist for 20 plus years, that's the absolute gold standard, and anything less than that you will never hear it from us. So all our trials are randomized, double-blind, in fact quadruple-blind, because even when we take the blood draws and the biopsies and the labs, they are blinded, and obviously we have a matching placebo in all the trials, and yeah, so that's the gold standard we stick to.
Okay. And then final question, maybe from Jay. We can take a couple more questions, then we're at time, folks. Is there any new bleeding edge research discovered since last year? So I think you mentioned to me earlier a couple of new studies that literally just hit the press this week.
Well, wait for our immune aging randomized trial to come out in the next couple of months. But I think the 2 studies that just came out, one is actually not from us. It's from the Buck Institute of Aging. It's from the group of, I believe, Julie Anderson. It was a professor at the Buck Institute of Aging, and they showed that actually Urolithin A, Mitopure, is a very efficient senolytic, and it not only clears the zombie mitochondria, but also aids in the clearance of the zombie-like cells. So it's acting at a sort of whole cellular level. And the second study that I think the preprint just went live yesterday is from our amazing scientific team here. These are all very well trained, 10, 15 years plus of experience in the mitochondria. These are really mitochondrial gurus. And actually the image I showed you at the start is from a couple of these really amazing scientists who have published that Mitopure has these amazing benefits on cardiac aging. The cardiac cells also have the highest intensity of mitochondrial abundance, and they get stressed and damaged over time. And so in terms of cardiac failure that happens with aging, this also seems to have a lot of remarkable potential.
Okay, super. Well, I think we're at time, folks. I want to say a big thank you for taking the time to join us. I think what makes Timeline a very special place is having people like Dr. Anurag with us. He's been here for over a decade. We have amazing scientists that have dedicated much of their lives to the discoveries that we've made. And so that's what makes this a very special place to work. And we're very proud of what we've achieved, but we couldn't have done it without you, without our customers. So thank you for your trust. And we hope these sessions are helpful. Please do give us feedback, either email. You can email care@timelinenutrition.com, or you can leave us comments in the YouTube channel. And if these are helpful, we're happy to do more. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a happy new year.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.